I got a treat for you guys. I found the absolute worst video ever. This is literally the worst video I've ever seen. So instead of debating somebody, I'm gonna break down the video. I've never done this before. It's like a typical YouTube streamer kind of thing, you know, react to video or whatever. Here we go.
When you look at the solar system, there's 9 planets, right? According to Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're all spinning in the same direction. You know the odds of that? 2 to the 9th power. 1 in 512.
Okay, so I'm going to pause this video so many times. So there are 9 planets, and they all orbit around the sun in the same direction. And the odds of that are 2 to the 9th or 1 in 512. So I'm confused, like, why the dichotomy of clockwise versus counterclockwise. And also, 1 in 512 is not super rare, like, at all. It just flat out isn't. Now, why do all the planets, can I animate this? Why do all the planets orbit in the same direction? Well, the actual answer given to us by science is that that's basically inevitable. So gravity, as you know, causes objects to be attracted together, but it really attracts it to a central point. So Earth, the reason Earth is a sphere is because all the mass is being pulled to the center. Once you're in the center, there's nowhere else for that force to pull you to. So things end up as spheres because of that. Now with particles that are in motion, so everything in our universe spins. The galaxies are a lot of galaxies are spiraled. All the matter orbits around a central point. Everything orbits around the star. Why is that? Well, as gravity pushes things towards each other, let me go back to this real quick. Everything's already moving a little bit. Everything always has some momentum. So nothing can like perfectly go to, there's no like actual point that everything goes to in the middle because of their momentum. So because of that, the objects, and I'll rewind this a little bit. Because of that, the objects don't end up going to the actual center. They get deflected a little bit, but then gravity pulls them back in and pulls them back in. That is the nature of how an orbit works. We can see that pretty clearly with these comets. None of them are really going in the right direction. That's going backwards. But the comet isn't going towards the exact center, which would be the sun, and then the comet hits the sun. It's off by a little bit, so it ends up orbiting around. That's why galaxies are the way they are. That's why the Milky Way is the way it is. So, you know, our galaxy, it would have, like what we see here, would have began as a dispersed disk, but, you know, after countless, well, how do I say this? The other thing is, why is the galaxy like a disk and not just a sphere of rotating stuff? Well, the matter in here, it interacts and it collides, and then eventually it forms things like planets and moons. So a bias does eventually develop. So when you look at the solar system, we see that the planets fall on a pretty nice plane, but Pluto is way off. Pluto's off by several degrees. But if we look at the comets, I could add more comets, but I'm not going to. We can see those don't fall on the plane. And if we added a bunch of more comets, we would see that they end up kind of in all kinds of crazy directions. But when you have gazillions of particles interacting and colliding together, eventually there's sort of like I said earlier, a bias that develops, and there's one particular like orientation or plane that ends up being the favored one for kind of not exactly random reasons, but there we go. All right. What's next? Here we go.
That's very rare. And by the way, during this conversation, do not say it was God's will. Because if you use God, you have to read the Bible. And the Bible does not depict the earth as a spinning ball in a sea of nothing at all. So you can't have it both ways, guys. You can't have a firmament, 4 corners. God sits up and looks at us like grasshoppers. You can't have that and a spinning ball and nothing. Okay, listen. Just please listen, because it's impossible. All right, next up on the...
Okay, so I have no idea what he's talking about here. Is he saying, like it sounds like he's saying, don't try to argue with somebody that doesn't think the earth is flat by using the Bible because they'll reject it. I mean, that kind of sounds like what he's saying. I'm not really sure, but like, let's just dissect what he said. if the Earth is flat, where are the four corners? Does a flat Earth have four corners? No, like it's a circle. We can see their flat Earth logo right there and right there. So, like, that doesn't even work for him. It's like I just don't understand the logic there. And like another thing is, like, he's right. You shouldn't use the Bible because doing apologetics is not epistemology. They're not the same thing at all. Apologetics is where you try to use logic to argue for foregone conclusions. You're not trying to learn anything new. You're trying to confirm what is already thought, right? So it is completely useless as a debate tactic because you can't gain knowledge that way. How are we doing in the chat? Pretty good, looks like. All right, moving on.
Solar system model, it's on a flat plane. Now it's up and looks at us like grasshoppers. You can't have that and a spinning ball and nothing. Okay, listen, just please listen, because it's impossible. All right, next up on the solar system model, it's on a flat plane. Not just is the solar system a flat plane, the entire Milky Way galaxy is a flat plane. Want to talk about flat Earth? Oh, flat Earthers, flat Earthers. You're saying that after a Big Bang, even with the law of...
Okay, so the galaxy, or the solar system is not a flat plane. The 8 real planets are within a few degrees of inclination of each other. And then loser planet Pluto is way off. But like we looked at earlier, the comets are not, like, they go in all kinds of crazy directions. The Oort cloud, like, I can't get you the Oort cloud on here, but the Oort cloud is literally like a sphere of comets and particles around the solar system. So the solar system its shape comes from basically the extent to which the sun's gravity extends outward into space, and it extends outward in all directions. So the universe or the solar system, by all accounts, is not a flat plane at all. And the galaxy is the galaxy's flat like pizza, but calling it a plane is kind of stupid because it's only 100 times wider than it is thick. You know, when I think of like a flat plane, I think of like paper, and paper is far more than 100 times wider than it is thick. So that's just me being nitpicky, but you get the idea.
Thermodynamics called Anthem a flat plane. The entire Milky Way galaxy is a flat plane. Want to talk about flat Earth? Oh, flat Earthers, flat Earthers. You're saying that after a Big Bang, even with the law of thermodynamics called entropy, which we'll get to in a second.
Okay, my prediction is that him trying to use entropy and thermodynamics will be utterly hilarious.
Somehow our galaxy ended up being a perfectly flat plane where all the planets spin in the same direction. The odds of that are less than winning the Mega Lotto every single day for thousands of years.
What? I would love to see the arithmetic on that. The fact that the planets go around the sun in the same... Oh, this website totally froze. The fact that the planets all go around the sun counterclockwise when viewed from above is less than winning the Mega Lotto every day for thousands of years. That makes absolutely no sense. There's flat out nothing about the way objects move in space according to gravity that makes it unlikely. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's this force, curved space-time, or gravity, depending on if you want to be like a Reddit nerd or just everyman when you're describing it. There's nothing about that that's like unlikely or impossible. So like, it's kind of like he's doing this thing where, you know, the planets all orbit in one direction. Oh my God, what are the odds of that? The odds are 0. Okay, like if I took this glass and I shattered it on the floor, then if I were to do that in a trillion different parallel universes, the glass, the shards of glass that would end up on the floor would be different every time. But that doesn't mean that you can therefore say the shards of glass that are on the floor when I actually do it were impossible or anything like that. There's nothing impossible about that. That's just the way things are, and it did that for just natural reasons. It's so silly. So the other thing is, like, I already did this, but the solar system is not flat. It's really not, or it's not a plane, that is. And also, I don't know if he's talking about, he said the Milky Way and solar system. There are other solar systems, guys. We can see them. These are called like protoplanetary disks, if you want to look them up. We can see solar systems forming in other parts of the galaxy. And if we look at them, some of the ones we look at, like this one, we look at them like straight on. Others that we look at, like this one over here, they're pointed with, the leading edge is pointing towards us. There's no such thing as up, down, left, right in space. I mean, not really. There's no real X and Y axis or Z axis. It's just completely relative. It doesn't really matter in any way. Oh man, there's other proof of this, like quasars. We can see quasars. Now, a quasar happens when a black hole ejects mass from its poles. So this is a real photo of one. This is a real photo of one too. But there are lots of quasars that we can't see because mostly the only ones we can see are if the beam happened to be pointing straight at us. So if the galaxy, the universe, is supposed to have this plane, but there are things that are angled directly at us, well then just throw everything that he just said out. And then by trying to study binary star systems, we can see that the dance that they do, sometimes they go this way with respect to us, sometimes they're orbiting this way with respect to us. When we try to find exoplanets, one of the easiest ways to do that is to see if the planet casts, if the planet goes in front of its host star. I really wanted to use this website, but it's not working. If the planet goes in front of its host star, that will dim the light from it, but that only works if that solar system has a particular, like its leading edge is pointing towards us. So when we try to look at stars and we see no evidence of that, that clearly doesn't mean that there definitely aren't any star or planets orbiting it. There could be all kinds of solar systems, again, that are just pointed in different directions where we can't do that. Anyways, chat, how are we doing? Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Oh, no, that's not all I wanted to say about that. The other thing, shoot, I really need this. Let's get the sky live. The other thing is our solar system is not, here we go. So our solar system kind of has, if you look at the planets, there's a plane to it. In reality, it doesn't. But look at the Milky Way in the back. This has been known for a very, very long time. The disk of our galaxy and the disk of our planetary disk in our solar system, they don't match up at all. We are tilted at 60 degrees with respect to the Milky Way. So there's nothing matches up here. He's pretending like everything is perfect and everything matches, and that's like the signature of God in the universe, and that's how we know that it's not flat. And it's just so silly. And the most ironic part about all this, the thing that's just so stupid, is he's talking about the Milky Way and all these other things. He's using knowledge from modern astronomy to say that modern astronomy is 100% false. This guy doesn't believe that space even exists. He doesn't believe in any of he thinks that there is a moon and a sun, but what they are, who knows? But you don't get to say this is what the science says in order to argue that science is lying about everything. It's so dumb.
Understand that. Now look at the moon. The moon is a perfect circle. The odds that happened after Big Bang and just chaos of atoms and particles and dust and rocks colliding is zero. The odds are literally zero. There's no force. There's no wind. There's no erosion. There's no water. There's no force acting upon that moon that would make it a perfect sphere.
Okay, so once again, he couldn't be more wrong. There is a force. It's called gravity. And because of the way gravity works, spheres are exactly what you end up with. Like if you have a ball of water just floating somehow, suspended or whatever, like in those parabolic flights you can take. Now, it's not because of gravity. It's because of intermolecular forces with the water. But it will force the water to conform to a sphere. Gravity does the exact same sort of thing. So we know exactly what makes the moon a sphere. And what else did he say? It's not perfect. You can tell pretty clearly by looking at it that it's full of craters all over the place. So I don't know this for the moon, but like it's the same story with Earth. The gravity causes it to, conform to a sphere, except neither the moon nor the Earth is a perfect sphere because the Earth is rotating. It's 43 kilometers wider than it is tall, for example. Oh, God, what else? No, I think that pretty much covers everything he said there. We are only a minute and a half into this, and we've been talking for 20 minutes. This is how bad this is.
Next up, why are the craters all... The odds are literally zero. There's no force. There's no wind. There's no erosion. There's no water. There's no force acting upon that moon that would make it a perfect sphere. Next up, why are the craters all perfect spheres? The way asteroids hit, side angle, we've never witnessed an asteroid, okay? The odds that the spin...
Okay, so we have gazillions of photos of asteroids. The idea that we've never witnessed an asteroid, that makes absolutely no sense, but whatever. Now, he kind of has a point. Every crater is, or almost, we'll see that this actually isn't always the case, but the craters are circular. Now, a lot of comets, like you guys have probably seen videos on Earth of asteroids burning up in our atmosphere, and they're not coming straight down, they're coming from across. So why does it always create these circular craters? The answer to that's actually interesting, and this has been known about for a long time. So before I talk about that, I would like to hear, what is a flat earther's, and maybe some of you have heard them try to explain this, what is a flat earther's explanation for why craters exist? We have craters on Earth too. I mean, they reject so much about space. I don't know if they think asteroids don't exist. I mean, if asteroids do exist, then they're up there too, and I don't know. It's like whatever. So, where do craters come from? Well, a crater is formed from an explosion. So, asteroids will be traveling at many tens of kilometers per second. They're traveling extremely quickly. And they have so much kinetic energy that when they hit something, they explode. I mean, there's no choice but for it to do that. And they'll partially melt the rock that they hit too. And what you should already know is energy gets released in all directions. If I were to turn around and face that way, you could still hear me. It'd be quieter, but the sound travels in all directions. Light will, if you have a light source and there's nothing like blocking it off, the light will go in all directions. An earthquake sends out seismic waves in all directions. So what happens is the asteroid is going so fast that when it contacts the Earth, the moon, or whatever, it releases that energy in all directions. And so it inevitably creates a crater. Now, the release of that energy, the shock wave from it, will be faster than the speed at which the comet was moving. And it happens so quickly that it can only create a crater. Because again, all directions, that will be spherical. And, a crater is sort of like half of a sphere, or it's like a cross section of a sphere. So you're always going to end up with a circle because of that. And like another reason this happens is that the kinetic energy of the asteroid, it's traveling so fast that the kinetic energy is actually greater than the forces that bond the atoms together within it. So it will always obliterate itself. But actually, fun fact, we actually do have elliptical craters. I actually just learned about this yesterday. We think that elliptical craters form because shortly before the asteroid hits the Earth or the moon or Mars or whatever, it breaks up into pieces. And so it's kind of like multiple impacts kind of along a straight line. And so we end up with an ellipse. What else? Now, I mean, if I were to say this to the guy, I bet he would probably, he'd say something like, "You're just making all of that up." But, the question is, ask yourself, I know I just said a lot of things, but does any of that not make sense? I mean, it all makes perfectly good sense, if you ask me.
Of the moon, perfect sphere. Now,
okay, look at the chat for a second. They look like potatoes. Asteroids do? Yeah, for the most part. All right, what's next?
next up, why are the craters all perfect spheres? The way asteroids hit, side angle, we've never witnessed an asteroid, okay? The odds that the spin of the moon is exactly the same speed as it rotates around the Earth, again, are 0. If it was 1/4 of 1 mile per hour different, it would slowly turn. The fact it doesn't, and there is 0 physics explanations with the model of gravity as we know it to explain why the moon, why its axis rotation is exactly matching it rotate around us so that we only see one side.
Again, could not be more wrong. We've known about tidal locking for a really long time, so this might be kind of hard for you to see, but tidal locking is what we see happening on the left. As the moon orbits the Earth, it rotates at the same rate at which it goes around us. Again, that's been understood for so long. And it's like, you can describe this with equations. I don't have the arithmetic in front of me, but I mean, there we go. And like, it's not just our moon. Pretty much all large moons are tidally locked. Again, I don't know if you'll be able to see this very well, but Pluto is tidally locked to its largest moon. I don't know if it's pronounced Charon or Karen, but they're both tidally locked to each other. The Galilean moons of Jupiter are tidally locked. So there we go. And just once again, why is this so special? The fact that the moon is tidally locked. Why are we forced to say that that's just completely unimaginable, and then therefore Earth must be flat, and therefore God must have made it? There's nothing in any of this that's like, oh, that proves it can't be nature. Checkmate, atheists. Another important thing is, like, with respect to the moon, it's really important to note that the way the moon looks only makes sense on a globe model. This can't possibly make any sense on a flat Earth model, and here's why. On a flat Earth, with a moon only a few hundred or a few thousand miles away, people would see different parts of it all the time, but we don't. So I'm going to have to use a clock as an analogy. So we'll just pretend this is the moon above the Earth, right? And then the flat Earth is down here below it. Well, people can be thousands of miles apart and look at the moon. And what that would mean is, if somebody's way over here, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse cursor, but way over here in this corner, then they would be looking at the moon and they would see 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Those are the parts of the moon they would see. But somebody in a different country thousands of miles away, or let's say they're right below the moon, like the moon is directly above their head, they would see 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. They would see parts of the moon that the person over here can't. And then somebody way over here would see 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. That obviously is not the case. The moon always looks, well, it doesn't actually always look exactly the same, but the moon cannot possibly be close to us, or the way it looks to every observer being the same is physically impossible. It's absolutely physically impossible. I'm going to come back to this later because he says something else really dumb.
Light being shined upon his feet to explain why the moon, why its axis rotation is exactly matching it rotate around us so that we only see one side. Light being shined upon a sphere does not make the luminescence the same all the way across. You can do a test with a tennis ball and a flashlight. It's impossible. It can't happen. It only happens on two-dimensional objects. Seeing as you...
Okay, so what he's now telling us is that the moon has to be a two-dimensional object. So the moon is flat. I'm actually not really sure what he's saying. What it appears to me he's saying is you can't possibly have a fully illuminated three-dimensional shape, right? So this is impossible if it's three-dimensional because light can't possibly illuminate 50% of a sphere. That is not actually true. If the light source is significantly bigger, it could. But we also don't see exactly 50% of the moon. It's impossible to see 50% of a sphere no matter what. So even if he's right and less than 50% of it can possibly be illuminated, we don't see 50% of it all at one time. I'll tell you what I mean later. And then the other thing about the moon being flat. I mean, do I have a better picture of the moon? Look at the edge of the moon. It can't possibly be flat, right? These are those perfectly circular craters he was talking about, right? Well, notice how these perfectly circular craters are elliptical. A flat object cannot be with a flat object. The moon plainly isn't flat. All you have to do is look at the moon through a crappy $100 telescope or a pair of binoculars, and you can immediately see that it obviously looks nothing like a flat object. So, checkmate once again. What else? Okay, here's the other thing I wanted to tell you about. The moon... Where's my picture of... Oh no, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Sorry. No, that's not it either. Okay, sorry. We actually see different parts of the moon because it wobbles. So the moon isn't always pointing directly at Earth in the same way. It just kind of goes like this. Look here, and you can see that a little bit more clearly right here. So, if the moon were a two-dimensional object, then this would also be just completely impossible. So, I mean, there we go. I don't know what else to say.
I've only seen one side of the moon because of its miraculous rotation and its perfect circle. And the fact that the luminescence is the same across the whole thing implies, I'm not stating this, it implies it's a two-dimensional object.
Okay, here's what a flat earther needs to do. How can a two-dimensional object, the moon is not never, even if you think it's flat, it's never not a flat disk, right? So a flat earther needs to tell the world, how can a flat two-dimensional object be partially illuminated? Like if you guys go out tonight, you'll see it's a waxing moon. It's a very thin crescent. A flat object being shown upon with a light source can't do that. It's physically impossible. Okay? So no, it does not imply that it's a two-dimensional object. He had an extremely weak case. This is what flurfers do all the time. He had an extremely weak argument that almost made a little bit of logical sense for it's impossible to fully illuminate a three-dimensional object. But when they make arguments like that, you find that the logic of the argument isn't consistent across different conditions. Because if we take the same object, the moon, that he's saying has to be flat because of this observation, it can't be flat because of this observation. Nothing's homogeneous in the model. It's a crappy model and it can't make predictions. All right, moving on.
A lot more than it's a spinning sphere out of the chaos of the Big Bang. Okay? The size and weight of the moon, according to science, it is impossible for it to be rotating around our Earth. The way the moon was created, according to...
Okay, so the Earth is over 80 times the mass of the moon, so it actually makes perfect sense that the moon orbits the Earth. I have no clue what he could have possibly meant by that. Because of the size and shape of it's impossible that it orbits the Earth? No, that's exactly what would happen. Earth is bigger than the moon.
Okay? The size and weight of the moon, according to science, it is impossible for it to be rotating around our Earth. The way the moon was created, according to mainstream science, is that an object the size of Mars hit our Earth and created the moon. That's nonsense. We would have rings like Saturn. Where's all the dust? Where's all the debris? Where's everything? That all just disappeared? That makes no sense at all.
I'm pretty sure that boiling water makes no sense to this guy. If you showed him a pot of boiling water, he'd be like, "What? What?" So yeah, I believe you, the guy, that doesn't make any sense to you. Earth probably did have rings for a little while, but I mean, this event happened billions of years ago. we have no idea how old Saturn's rings are or how long ring structures are stable, because we've only been looking at them for a couple hundred years. But, you know, Saturn's rings are made of ice particles. They're way smaller, and they're moving way faster than the particles from the collision that made our moon would have been. So the mechanics are completely different.
And created the moon. That's nonsense. We would have rings like Saturn. Where's all the dust? Where's all the debris? Where's everything? That all just disappeared? That makes no sense at all. Next up, the sun is 400 times bigger and miraculously 400 times farther away than the moon.
It's not a miracle.
And like two machine-cut quarters, they line up perfectly to make an eclipse. The odds of that are 1 in trillions times 1 in trillions times 1 in trillions. It's not possible.
Where did this guy learn to do statistics and math? It's it's so dumb. That is one of the craziest coincidences, that we can have solar eclipses. And if the moon were, you know, a few thousand miles farther away, then we wouldn't have total solar eclipses. But so here's the thing. It's exactly 400 times farther away and exactly 400 times smaller. The sun is actually slightly less than 390 times farther away, and it is slightly less than 401 times bigger, right? So when you point out coincidences that don't mean anything, that's sort of a Texas sharpshooter fallacy. There's nothing miraculous about coincidences. There are an unthinkable number of coincidences all around us all the time. But if you point them out and then say, aha, I found it, this could only mean miraculous intervention, that's like a Texas sharpshooter fallacy. But this is not just a Texas sharpshooter fallacy. It is that, but he also rounded the numbers, because it's actually less than 390 times farther away and a little bit more than 400 times bigger. So he's cheating the numbers. He's fudging the math in order to make a logical fallacy work. That is, you can't get more intellectually bankrupt than that. You just can't. And I want to reiterate this. This means nothing. Nothing at all. What are we? 37 minutes in, and we've only gone over 3 minutes. This world record of largest number of false claims for a video.
That the perfect circles in this world, which can't happen, they line up perfectly to make an eclipse. The odds of that are 1 in trillions times 1 in trillions times 1 in trillions. It's not possible. That the perfect circles in this world, which can't happen on the moon given the existing model, line up perfectly with something 400 times larger from a third factor, which is your fixed position on an Earth, that they claim is spinning 1,000 miles an hour.
So he's clearly just saying random things at this point. He went back to the perfect circles again, the craters on the moon, and said that the perfect circles on the moon perfectly line up with the sun. That's not his argument. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know. He has a lot to say about the sun. I think he probably stares at the sun for hours and hours and hours a day. And I think he's been doing that for decades.
Okay, the shadow of the eclipse is 70 miles wide. There is no way to make a shadow smaller than the object. Of course, there are people that say umbra, because like goats, they've been trained to say that.
Okay, we gotta go backwards. So, umbras and penumbras, these have been understood for centuries, right? So here's the effect here. So these are not impossible. You can have, there's just so much he's saying that's wrong. So first of all, the shadow of the moon is not smaller than the moon. It's actually bigger than the moon. But there's more than one shadow. So what he's talking about is what we call the totality of the eclipse, where it's completely dark. That's the umbra, right? Well, this is why that happens. The deal is the sun is bigger than the moon. So the light coming from the sun and striking the moon is capable of casting light over the top of the moon and over the bottom of the moon, right? Or angled in a way. So What that does is you get a shadow, and some parts of the shadow overlap with areas that are getting sunlight. Like right here, this is technically a shadow right here because it's from the light coming from the bottom of the sun, striking the moon, and there's that cone, right? That shadow. But light from the top of the sun hits that region. So it is a shadow, it's darkened, but it's not like a totality or whatever. A much smaller, what we call the umbra, that's just the area that represents where there are no parts of the light source that overlap. So this has been, like I said, this has been understood for an extremely long time. How embarrassing.
The eclipse is 70 miles wide. There is no way to make a shadow smaller than the object. Of course, there are people that say umbra because, like goats, they've been trained to say that, but they cannot recreate an umbra on Earth. They only believe it because they've been indoctrinated to believe it since the time of their birth by people who want to remove their connection to God.
Okay, so there's two things there. No, you actually can do this at home, kids. Hey, kids, try this experiment at home. Get a light source that's bigger than the object you're making a shadow of and shine it against a wall. You can very plainly see the penumbra here, right? See how it's fuzzy? That is the lighter shadow that is being overlapped with the light source from a different perspective. Whereas this darker part, that's the umbra, and that is smaller than the object itself. So, like, he said the opposite of what's true. You can't do this or demonstrate it. No, you can. Like, little kids do this kind of stuff. And I don't know if you caught what he said there. Let me just repeat this last little part.
Remove their connection to God.
Whoop, I went too far. Or I didn't go far enough.
Remove their connection to God.
No, come on.
On Earth, they only believe it because they've been indoctrinated to believe it since the time of their birth by people who want to remove their connection to God.
So there we go. Of course, we add the conspiracy. Kudos to him. He hasn't really said anything conspiratorial yet, but it always comes back to that with these guys. It's not just a conspiracy, but a conspiracy that specifically offends his personal feelings. They don't worship my God. Wah. So that's actually the motivation here.
Okay, next up, evolution. So we have something called the Big Bang, which is the ultimate chaotic event.
So, shape of the Earth, shape of the Moon, evolution, Big Bang. None of those things have anything to do with each other. None of them. Chat, how are we doing? I'm kind of looking at you guys, but I'm also just kind of trying to go through We all doing good? Good. Thanks for the gifts, by the way.
What banged? Who banged it? Why did it bang? How did everything come from a fixed point? Don't even try and tackle that because it makes zero sense. But here's something that you can easily think of, and it disproves everything about mainstream science. The law of entropy is that matter and energy naturally go from order to chaos. If you break a glass, even after 1 billion years, the broken shards will not reform into the glass because objects have a tendency towards entropy, towards dissolving, towards breaking apart.
Okay, so that is a halfway decent generalization that would get you like a B+ in middle school science. So let's just assume that everything he said is correct. So if what he said, so he's saying this is absolute instead of a generalization. So if we take him literally at his word, what this means is at all times, all things always go into disorder. That would mean that even if God exists and Earth is flat, nothing complex could form, right? And that's because he's failing to realize that saying entropy is the tendency of objects to go from order to disorder. It's a tendency. It's not an absolute. You can have exchanges of energy within a system that is gradually losing usable energy, and things can still happen. You can have metabolic reactions along with catabolic reactions, or just to say things can build up and break down at the same time. It's just that the trend is toward like things getting disordered. And again, This has nothing to do with evolution. He's not arguing against evolution or arguing against the shape of the earth. He's actually arguing with reality. Because again, if I grant him what he's saying, even that it undermines his own beliefs. Nothing can happen with his terrible understanding of what entropy actually is. So he thought he had an ironclad silver bullet fired from a golden gun, but actually it's just nonsense.
Whether it's empires or broken glass, the longer you wait, the more the broken shards become sand. They get ground down, they will never go the other direction. So how do we have a human eyeball from a Big Bang? The Big Bang happens and it creates a never-ending waterfall, cascade, domino effect of atoms smashing against each other in an empty darkness for eternity. So given the law of entropy that things go from order to chaos, how on earth do we have the structure of a human eyeball in which we can see light and then recreate the light in our minds as images that represent our physical reality? It contradicts to a point of laughable mockery. Okay.
I agree with the laughable mockery. So I trust that we're all doing plenty of laughable mockery. So I have to gloss over how everything he's saying has nothing to do with the Big Bang. Because remember, he said Big Bang evolution. Because I'd have to just describe the entire theory of the Big Bang or evolution, and we don't have that kind of time. So let's just ask ourselves. He's talking about eyes, right? What evidence do we have that the eye organ appeared naturally? Well, there are around 40 different unrelated eye structures that have been found in the animal kingdom, including multiple of the same like kind of eye, like a compound eye, like certain mollusks have. Well, vertebrates like us, we have a compound eye, but mollusks have a compound eye, but it works differently than ours. It's independent. So we have just simple photoreceptive cells. We have like pinhole. Well, this is more of a pinhole one. And then we have, I can't remember what these divots are called, or an eye cup. There, it was labeled. All I had to do was look at it. If the eye is, so like in things that exist in nature often resemble other things because there are certain tendencies and forms for things to take on in nature, right? So like for crystals, for example, there are thousands of different types of crystals and minerals and gems, but there are only so many colors that they can come in. So do we take all of the red crystals and say that means therefore, I don't know, communism? Because it's red, those are communists. Like, it's obviously that's stupid, right? And there's only so many shapes they can take on too, like hexagons and cubes and prisms and whatever. But with the eye, if the eye is perfect and too complex to be designed, that is completely undermined by the fact that multiple different working eyes exist, right? That is absolutely not the prediction that special design or intelligent design, special creation would make. And if you're then going to move the goalpost and then say multiple different eyes could only have been created, then clearly there's no demarcation. The only place you end up at is everything must be created, which is useless. It's epistemologically useless because it's untestable. Every single thing is created. That we could never test that claim because we could only use created things to test it. There would be no way of knowing what is or is not created.
Okay, now understand that if anyone says, well, sexual selection, Big Bear, you know, over long periods of time, I used to believe this stuff too. I believed all of it. I loved astronomy. I minored in evolution in college. I loved thinking about how the environment would interact with a human being, increase their odds of procreation or decrease their odds of procreation, and certain genes would pass. Nonsense. You're telling me that force that created the human eyeball, which is unbelievably complicated, that through a long process of light hitting cells and then becoming rods and cones, if that's from sexual selection, why does our skin burn?
Okay, I think I went too far, but he said evolution. He learned about this stuff, and now he's saying evolution is nonsense. I don't understand. He also said Big Bang sexual selection. He's not even trying to connect those dots together. But how is any of that nonsense? He actually described it decently a little bit ago there. So ask yourself, do organisms with the best environmental fitness survive the longest and have the greatest statistical chance of reproducing? If that's true, then it clearly isn't nonsense, right? He graduated from the Academy of Google searching. Yeah, I mean, I guess. You could get the correct answers to all these by searching Google, though, too.
Unbelievably complicated. That through a long process of light hitting cells and then becoming rods and cones. If that's from sexual selection, why does our skin burn in the sun? Why do I need an umbrella right now so that my skin doesn't become red and cancerous? What?
So, if we have eyes, why does this guy get a sunburn? That is top 10 questions that science cannot answer and never will be able to answer. He keeps saying sexual selection, which is really weird. This has almost nothing to do with that. But so to answer his question, evolution is all about trade-offs. So the only thing that matters is fitness measured by reproductive rates. So you can sacrifice one thing, maximize another thing, and as long as the net result of that is better survival and reproductive odds, then it would be favored by natural selection. So for example, the cost of not absorbing enough sunlight to make vitamin D is much more severe than the possible risk of sunburn, right? Because he's saying, if evolution's true, then how come I haven't evolved a way to not get sunburn? Because you need vitamin D, right? So there's a trade-off there. And even if you get sunburns and you get melanoma, which is rare, you can't pass down melanoma to your offspring. And also, you would develop melanoma much later in life after you reproduced. So that's nothing about this makes it like a nail in the coffin for evolution. It doesn't at all. And people who are descended from people that live farther away from the equator, to answer his question even more, people like him, people like me, we have lighter skin because you can absorb a lot more sunlight with lighter skin, more fair skin, which that's useful if you live farther away from the equator because less sunlight is falling on the earth because of the shape of the earth. Not that he knows what the shape of the earth is.
Oh, Big Bear, it's because you're from the north. Why don't I have hair on my body? Why would I die outside in 30-degree weather without a structure around me? If my people came from Northern Europe, which they did for so long, how come I didn't evolve to not die in the snow and then die in the sun?
Okay, so you do have hair all over your body. He does, and I do, and so do you. We actually have as much hair as chimps do. It's just that the vast majority of all of our hair is really fine. So that's just kind of a side point. So here's the problem. Even if I agree with him, then what that would be is evidence against, this would be evidence that proves God did not create the earth. Because God tells us to be fruitful and multiply and spread all over the earth. And you believe he created the earth perfectly for life, yet we can't live outside in virtually all places. So this is an own goal. He very much kicked the ball into his own net on that one. Now, what would be interesting is, I'm not sure if human migration patterns out of Africa coincide with the advent of clothing. There's strong evidence that it does, but so if we have clothing, that allows us to spread into new environments. That in no way does that threaten the theory of evolution at all. Now, if you actually want to look into that, the advent of clothing and when humans moved around into different places, this has been done because humans get lice, but humans actually get two different kinds of lice. There's head lice, and then there's body lice, head lice, so there's actually three, but the only two that we care about are head lice and crotch lice, right? Because they both live where it's pretty hairy, right? By doing genetic analyses of those two, we can see that they diverged from each other somewhere around 70 to 100,000 years ago. So if we got way less hairy at that point, that's good evidence for when we started making clothing in order to compensate, or perhaps it would be we started wearing clothing, and so then there wasn't very much selective pressure for us to grow body hair, so we started growing less body hair. I may be putting the chicken before the egg in there, but who knows?
Sexual selection actually had an impact on us, like they say it did. If we can evolve to have the complexity of a human eyeball out of a big bang, even though that goes against entropy, why on earth have we evolved to not have skin that's resistant to the one constant in our life at all times, which is the sun and then the winter? It doesn't make any sense, right? So what is the point of all of this?
So he's still on this. I'm not sure if this guy knows this, but there are people who don't look like him, and they live in other parts of the world. Shocker, right? So there are people who live near the equator who have pigmented skin that does help them survive in the sun. And then there are people who live where there is no real winter, right? So the thing he's asking for exists, therefore proving evolution. I don't know if I'm going to argue his worldview, maybe God hates you. Maybe you're cursed. When he scattered everybody after the Tower of Babel, he cursed your forefathers to live in harsh places. There. If the alternative is God is responsible for things, then that's the alternate explanation, as far as I can see. And just this whole way of presenting arguments that he's doing, he has it in his mind that he gets to tell evolution how it works and what evolution should do, which that's insane. Like, herder, if I can think of something and evolution hasn't done it, then it doesn't exist. I mean, you might as well ask questions like, why doesn't my grandma have wheels? She uses a cane. If she had wheels, then it would be easier to move around. Yes, why doesn't your grandma have wheels? Why haven't I evolved to be smart so that someone will love me? Well, you don't get to tell evolution what it is supposed to do, right? Like, the same line of logic would be something like, if God exists, why are there poisonous plants? If God was real, he would have made everything on the planet edible, right? Now, I think that's actually not a very good argument, but neither is his. But they're the same kind of argument.
Is this supposed to give you despair and fear? No, it's removing it. We were created. That glass that was broken was a glass because someone made.
So let's rewind that.
So what is the point of all this? Is this supposed to give you despair and fear? No, it's removing it. We were created.
So there. This is it. The inspiration for his entire belief system is to prevent his feelings from getting hurt. Because he gives us the possibility of despair, and he says, no, it was all created for us. That is the motivation behind arguing against middle school level proven science.
That glass that was broken was a glass because someone made it. So someone made us to have eyes to see, ears to hear, a mouth to taste, hands to touch, a woman to love, a child to hold, right? That is love. And so what's the purpose of life? Serving that which gave us all of it. God. And they want...
So that's like voluntary slavery. The entire purpose of existing is to worship this thing. Notice that this is exactly what domestic abusers say and do. Your worth comes from me. Your purpose is to serve me. You are not good without me. Everything that makes you good is because of me. To not obey and serve me is wrong, right? That's just, that's messed up. I pray to Santa Claus that this guy does not have any serious relationships because he's obsessed with this like Stockholm syndrome, like domestic abuser sort of view of things.
God. And they want you to think that we are on a spinning ball in an infinite black, and every atom that just smashes together randomly eventually became your parents who randomly fucked and are now silently watching NCIS in some long, weird, passive-aggressive game, and you're just here to randomly smash your genitals against someone. No fuck.
Random genitals. Random genital smashing? I mean, earlier I was praying to Santa, but now I'm praying to Superman that this guy has no serious relationships. So, but he doesn't even realize that he's creating a straw man. He's creating a straw man argument, and then unironically, because he's too fucking stupid to realize it, saying that the straw man argument proves that his idea is better than the other idea. Like, imagine being so stupid that you think you're the only one that realizes that dumb ideas are dumb. That's what's going on here. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that dumb ideas are dumb. The problem is that he's just rejecting scientific facts because they hurt his feelings, which is what he admitted to just a little bit ago.
Way, guys, that's despair. That's the world where you need medication to get out of bed. Passive-aggressive game, and you're just here to randomly smash your genitals against someone. No fucking way, guys. That's despair. That's the world where you need medication to get out of bed. That's the world where you can be easily tricked because you have nothing to be grateful for or nothing to live for. When you know that your eyes of your...
Okay, so there are thousands of religions. And even if you believe in the one that's... I don't want to say this. There are thousands of religions, right? So if you believe in a religion that's different from his, then you're being tricked in his eyes. So therefore God, a religion involves a God, right? And his problem is that people that don't have God as part of their worldview are the ones that are going to be tricked. God is no pathway to being... To not getting tricked, right? Because there's a countless number of different gods. The only rebuttal or the only reply that someone like him can come up with is bigotry, which is to say, well, no, mine is the true one, even though it's predicated on faith. So, go figure. There have also been countless cults, including ones where people voluntarily took their own lives on purpose. But yeah, so evolution and the shape of the earth, those are the real dangerous ideas. Jeez, this guy's so stupid.
Nothing to be grateful for or nothing to live for. When you know that your eyes of your children were created, that means whoever created it loves you. So serve that who loves you, which is your creator. There is no way that moon just got this. The story is an endless serpent distracting you from God's love and making you sad and full of despair. And every time I point out one of these deceptions and people say, oh, I can't be with you on this one, man. It's too much stress. I'm removing the stress. You're made in love. Your soul matters. Your choices matter. God loves you. Why would God give you eyes that can see your wife holding a baby? That came out of chaos? No.
Okay, that's the longest he ever... That's the longest he ever talked without me having to interject. I didn't bring this up earlier, but the thing where he says all that came... The moon, the whatever, that all came out of chaos. Nothing about the Big Bang or how evolution works is chaos. Everything that happens in the universe happens because of natural law. Objects move and chemical reactions happen for a reason. Maybe not literally like ontologically for a reason, but like because of reasons. There's cause and effect. There's no end goal. So yeah.
Why would God make all these unbelievable nonsense things that everyone tries to explain away? None of the scientists have any cohesion whatsoever. You know, they just changed the time frame of the Big Bang by 1 billion years, and no one batted an eye because they are not walking with God.
So, this guy has no concept of how science works. Scientists have extremely good cohesion on the vast majority of all scientific knowledge. That's how science works. That's why we know things. I mean, he may reject most of astronomy or whatever, and a lot of physics, but the rest of, like, the vast majority of all science, he wouldn't say is fake. He wouldn't say that atoms don't exist. He agrees with the like entropy and thermodynamics and all of that other stuff. Now, there are details where scientists don't agree, but those details are so much smaller than the knowledge, the body of knowledge that we know is true, right? And what else did he say? Oh, yeah, no, we didn't change the timeline of the Big Bang by 1 billion years, or like at all. Like, this is probably the James Webb Space Telescope thing. If we're going to modify our timeline for the Big Bang, it may be by like a couple 100 million years. And you hear that and you're like, well, that's an enormous amount of time. 200 million years is less than 2%. It is a change of less than 2% of our timeline. So, oh no, we were over 98% accurate. That means that the whole thing is made up.
Have gratitude. When you have gratitude towards your creator, and it's so simple. Just be thankful every day. Be thankful that this was created, that this isn't random results of genital smashing. And
he said it again. This guy, he must have like severe repressed sexual disorders or something, because his idea of sex is to like pulverize your hips together until your pelvis becomes dust. Like, what is going on?
Then when you're thankful, when you say, thank you, God says, no problem. God is everything. Guys, this is created out of love and form. And when you see it, your life has more form and order and beauty and love. You can forgive. You can call out bullshit. You can get mad and not be scared that you're bubbling with rage.
Okay, so that obviously can't even be true. So, like, the purpose of God is to forgive and turn the other cheek or whatever. Atheists make up like 3 or 4% of the general population in the United States. But, like, in prison, it's like 1 out of every 1,000, right? So, clearly, good people do good things and bad people do bad things for a reason that is entirely divorced from religion. In fact, we have direct evidence that not believing in God makes you more peaceful. So that's an L.
Rage. The purpose of your life is to have gratitude and purpose and serve God.
More voluntary slavery.
That which made you. That science didn't give you eyes. Random fucking over 1 billion years didn't give you ears. God did.
So science has allowed the blind to see and the deaf to hear. God created blindness and deafness. So, thanks science.
And that's logic. Do you think logic and math explains how our fucking solar system and galaxy is a straight flat plane? And even though we have the law of entropy, for some reason, the most complicated physical things that we can't imagine just came out of fucking?
This is so creepy. This video at this point we've been watching for 9 minutes, and it has taken 1 hour and 8 minutes to address all of the things that he has said wrong in only 9 minutes. So, this is like the most ironic statement in the history of humanity, that what he's saying is logic. He needs Dr. Ruth. Oh my god. There's no way she's still alive. I remember watching that show when I wasn't supposed to when I was younger. Dr. Ruth.
He is a straight flat plane, and even though we have the law of entropy, for some reason, logic. Do you think logic and math explains how our fucking solar system and galaxy is a straight flat plane, and even though we have the law of entropy?
Yeah, so once again, he doesn't understand. The solar system is not a straight flat plane, and we talked about this earlier. He's saying the universe is a flat plane. That would mean that, the solar system is a flat plane. A solar system is a collection of objects that orbit the sun. That's not what he thinks the case is. I don't know what flurfers think the planets are, but they don't think that they're orbiting the sun. So again, he's using modern astronomy as proof that all of modern astronomy is a lie. This is so just unthinkably dumb.
For some reason, the most complicated physical things that we can't imagine just came out of fucking?
He's still talking about that. He's still talking about... He's still talking about that.
You're out of your mind. That is the illogic. Logic comes from a word, guys. Logos, logic. It's the same word, the word. God, form, natural law. It's all the same thing.
That's not really true. The root of the word logic is logos. That's a Greek word. And that means reason. Or it can sometimes mean word. But like Christian theology or Christology, they sort of adopted that word to mean the word of God. So you can find that I think it's the Gospel of John, the very beginning of the Gospel of John. It says the word was with God when God created the universe or the heavens and the earth or whatever. And therefore, like, Jesus is supposed to be the word of God in some way, or it's like a part of him or whatever. But yeah.
You know what is real and what is not real. And when you know truth will set you free, work will set you free. Labor, truth, love, family, soil, that's what's real. Then you won't fall for these tricks.
Well, we mercifully got to the end, but I don't know how many things I agreed with him on. Maybe like 2, but I agree that the truth will set you free. The truth is extremely persuasive, and we all know this. So that's why I have confidence that this moron with a messiah complex is not a secret genius. Is not the secret genius that he thinks he is. All of you watching this and me, we are not tricked by some stupid conspiracy that was cracked by somebody who doesn't even know what the fucking moon is. Okay, so yes, the truth will and has set us free. So there we go. It took an hour and 12 minutes, but we got through it.